Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on what I just noted was the first sunny Tuesday we've had in a long time. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie Demers. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Tech Alliance, and we are thrilled to be partnering and continuing our partnership with the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center to bring to you a cybersecurity program that will bring monthly webinars to you to learn more how to protect your business, to protect your departments, to protect those around you through web-based training, e-courses, webinars, tools, and a workbook that hopefully most of you have seen already and have been working along with throughout the past couple months. So today you're going to learn how to detect threats to better protect your business. But before we get started, we have some homework for you that I'm hoping you can help us with. We want to know, what have you learned so far? What are you hoping to learn more of? Assuming that this is not your first webinar, if it is, you have additional homework, which is to go back and watch some of the previous webinars which have been recorded. But we want to know what topics really interest you. What are some of the things that you're hung up on and really want to dig into more as it relates to cybersecurity and how to protect your business. So go ahead and drop that in the chat at any time. I'm also about to introduce our speaker for today, but I want to let you know that he has a team of people here who are ready and willing to answer your questions as they arise. So I'm pretty sure Jeff doesn't plan on answering in the middle of his presentation, but his team is ready for you. He'll give a brief introduction of who's going to be answering those questions behind the scenes. So we'll keep it very casual today. Ask what comes to mind, tell us what questions you have for the future, and enjoy the program. So without further ado, oh, and as a reminder before I introduce our speaker, the SBDC advisors are available to you. So aside from the questions that you want us to provide more content around, know that you are able to connect with SBDC advisors free of charge at any time. So if there are certain topics that you really want to dig into a little bit more or have specific questions as it relates to your business, not only cybersecurity, please leverage that resource. So Jeff Stutzman is the founder of Trusted Internet, former founder of WAPAC Labs. He's a longtime supporter and member of the New Hampshire Tech Alliance, and he'll just be sharing with you a glimpse of his expertise in intelligence, commercial and government information security that he's been building over the past 25 years or more. Jeff, I don't want to date you too much. He is a man who really needs no more introduction than that. I think once he dives into the presentation, you will know that you are in very good and capable hands, and there's no one more well-suited to deliver this content today. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Jeff Stutzman, and I'm sitting in my little office in New Boston, New Hampshire, outside of the brand new space base. So that's very exciting. I'm going to just kick off and say I got to get that right. So just a quick agenda. Look, I'm going to try to make this as educational as possible, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a couple of minutes and introduce the company and the team. I've got a half a dozen folks, I think, that are sitting in chat on video, ready to answer your questions. But I'm going to show you what we do. I'm going to give you a couple of quick case studies. One is corporate, one is personal. So if you get hacked at work, you're getting hacked at home. I'm going to show you one of those case studies. And then what I'm going to do is to spend a few minutes, and I'm going to show you how we protect our customer base. I'm going to walk you through the architecture and show you the basic building blocks that you need and tell you the brands and the models of the things that we use. And hopefully that will help you in your decision-making process if you're thinking about heading down this path yourself. So first of all, we are a New Hampshire-based managed security service provider. What exactly is a managed security service provider? So if you've got cameras in your building, you have somebody that's monitoring those cameras to see if somebody breaks in. We do exactly the same thing for your computer system. So we set up firewalls, we deploy endpoints like antivirus and things like that. We do email protection, we do phish training, so we'll send you phishes and we'll We'll see who reels, who bites, and then we give videos to back up the training, and we monitor networks 24/7. If we see an attack, then we stop it. What we don't do is we don't do the traditional IT support. We focus very specifically on the security of your network. So if your printer runs out of ink, don't call me. Call your IT guy. If you have a problem with your firewall, if you feel like you've been infected with something, if there's something going on, then you call us and we deal with the security. In the last 2 years, this was really kind of cool. 2 years ago, we got nominated, unbeknownst to me, for the MSSP Alerts Top 200 Global MSSPs. And we came in at number 168 out of the top 200. Now, there are 20,000 companies like us around the world, and we came in at the top 200, and I didn't know. Somebody told them to call us because they liked the responsiveness of my team. Last year, we bumped up in that. This is kind of a big deal. It's one of those things that you don't pay for. Somebody has to nominate you, and you get it. What was interesting is in 2019, we were 5 people, and we were being compared to security groups with 250 or 300 people. The same thing last year. So that's pretty neat. Here's the other thing that I'm especially proud of. I work with almost all vets, and I get to choose them. And so I was a Navy intelligence officer. I was a Coast Guard administrator before that, a systems administrator. I've worked for Carnegie Mellon. I've got a great background. Look me up on LinkedIn if you're interested. But Jonathan Lance, Navy helicopter pilot, as a reservist, he's an 05, a commander, but he's also our COO and CFO. Amanda Gorski is on the line. Amanda is our VP for cybersecurity services. I call it the PMO, Project Management Office. But Amanda is also an FSO, a field security officer, and with 16 years of cyber. So she brings just a wealth of information for the intersection of government compliance and physical security and cyber, which is amazing. Great skill set, and she's a vet. Nate Paddock is the next one. Nate's a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, and his last job was running the Air Force's Security Operations Center. I hired him away from Dartmouth College, so that made me very happy. Aaron O'Reilly is on the call. Aaron has only been with us a few days, but I hired him away from a friend of mine. His boss is an old friend of mine at the Marine Corps Cyber, MARFOR Cyber. Before that, he was the deputy SOC director for SAIC and the SOC lead at Texas Instruments. So a wealth of knowledge. Mark Constantino, not a vet, but he's awesome, right? So Mark has been working IT for the last 15 years, last couple on his own, but he's been working at Convenient MD. And prior to that, I think he had 10 years at Dartmouth. And so when we deal with some of our really hard to work with customers, Mark has got the sweetheart personality that we can put on the phone, and he can walk you through just about anything that you need to do. On the far right are these things that we call virtual CISOs. And so virtual CISO, virtual Chief Information Security Officer, every time we go out and do a job, we name a virtual Chief Information Security Officer to the job. And so these guys all have certifications, CISSP, Chief Certified Information System Security Professional. They've all been CISOs in other jobs, and they are all vets. And so this is a really big deal. Last year, we got the Labor Department of Labor Hire Vets Platinum Award winner because we actively recruit them in various means. Just to give you an idea, this is a snippet of some of our customers. The red blocks are where we were called in to do pretty major incident responses. The dark blue, we've been doing a lot of work with DFAR and CMMC. So one of my past lives was as a GS-15 at the DoD Cybercrime Center. I had a heavy hand in what now is the DFAR from 2015 for cyber. had a heavy hand in writing a lot of that, although not CMMC. But because I had come out of that place, and a lot of those people are folks that I know, I get we get the phone calls. And then the light blue blocks are we do monitoring and protection of a lot of companies, but a lot of high net worth families. So chief executive officers. So we've got a company in Ohio. The chief executive officer lives here in New Hampshire. He's got 6 homes in total, and we protect all 6 homes. So we've got a ton of those things around the world, from London to Hawaii to Sydney, Australia. We've got a pretty good reach. So this is one of those case studies, right? So ransomware is like a lottery. A lot of cases you're going to get ransomed for something. If you've got an opening in your network, it's just going to happen. But in this case, this is a targeted event. So what you're looking at here, 332.57, blah, blah, blah. That's what $100,000 in Bitcoin looks like. And we did 7 of these transactions on one evening. And so I was having dinner at the Copper Door, and I got a phone call, and it was, "Hey, Jeff, how fast can you be in Houston?" And I said, "What's going on?" Company down there stopped trading on the NASDAQ. They're 4 days into a ransomware event, and they've got a real problem. So we got brought in, and sure enough, they had stopped trading on the NASDAQ. They were losing about $25 million a day. Long story short, at the time, this was the 3rd largest ransom paid out in American history. And so it was, this was one of the early ransoms that you now see that are becoming more common, where it's 3 million and 5 million and 40 million. And this was one of the small ones, but it was where it started out. So we paid out $700,000. 12 hours later, we had the company back in business. We re-architected their security architecture with the architecture that I'm going to show you in a minute, and we serve as their information security team. We monitor their networks long term now. This is a woman out in Orange County, California, and she actually writes a blog called The Fiscal Feminist, and we have permission to talk about this. But she wrote a voice blog about what had happened in her home. So if you're hacked at work, you're hacked at home. There's no question. In this case, this woman was the number 2 in her firm, big financial firm in Orange County. So you can imagine there's a lot of money floating around. She had the wireless router in her house overwritten with code that turned it into a keystroke logger. So every username and password that she put in for her bank accounts or for whatever in her home were collected by a bad guy who had hacked her Netgear wireless router. And so they stole her usernames and passwords, and then they stole her telephone number. They converted it from Verizon to Google, and they own the Google account now. Verizon had no reference or no record of her, and they used that information to change the pins on her accounts. And so in about a 3-week period, they stole $82,000 out of her bank accounts. So we flew out. We were in California the next day. We rewired the house, put in new wireless, put in firewalls, the architecture that I'll show you here in a few minutes. And then we sat with her for 2 days. And all we did was call all of the bank accounts and all of the credit cards and get them fixed and get the passwords off and change them to 2-factor authentication. And we've been working with her ever since, and she tells everybody about us. So this is where we go into a little bit more of the education. So in the space today, the number 1 concern that we get across the board is ransomware. And the number 2 is government compliance. The next thing that I'll show you is, in every case when we put our systems in, usually the first thing that we find hacked are the physical security systems. And then it's smart home systems, and then it's personal cybersecurity, telephones, iPads, whatnot. So this is, I'm going to just preface this by saying, I didn't draw this picture. This is actually right out of the wireless routers installation manual. and it gets plugged into a cable modem that gets plugged into the internet. And this is, believe it or not, this is what we find in most companies when we walk in for the first time. Maybe the slight variation, this might be a switch or a router, or if it's a small company, it's almost always a wireless. But this architecture is not safe, right? This architecture causes bad things to happen, especially when you think about your home, right? So a lot of people have their home cameras. You can look at it on your phone. You can call it up. Well, if you can look at it on your phone, so can a bad guy. And this is where this comes from. So this is what we do. So today I was asked to reference architecture, protect, and detect in the NIST cybersecurity framework. And so that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you 3 slides on the architecture that we use and why. And I'm going to tell you that I own 2 houses, one here in New Hampshire, one in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And I was happy to have that last year because of COVID. But in this case, this is the architecture that we use in both our homes. This is the architecture that I deploy to my employees' homes. And this is the same architecture that we use as a baseline for the companies that we deal with, whether it's 1 person or 7,500 people. This is the same architecture. So here we go. Every computer gets 2 applications. We do everything with Fortinet products. We lead every engagement with Fortinet products for lots of reasons, and I'd be happy to answer those questions at the end if you like. Fortinet as compared to others, but just for now, we use Fortinet products. So on every endpoint, we load up a managed antivirus. It's the Fortinet managed antivirus. It's called FortiClient. It gives us traditional antivirus capabilities. It gives us the ability to push patches for your upgrades. So not everybody's diligent about pushing patches, so that we can do that for them. Vulnerability scanning, remote troubleshooting, a VPN client, and if we see something in a company in the middle of the night, we can quarantine it and then work with IT the next morning. The second thing that we load up is a tool called Minerva's Armor. And what that says is anything that tries to bypass security, it will automatically kill. And so we like that because it gives us the ability to detect something called polymorphic code. What polymorphic code is one install doesn't look the same as the last or the last before that. They all look different. So a traditional antivirus has a hard time finding something that's not looking for something that, you know, it changes like that. If for the polymorphic code, traditional antivirus won't find it, so we loaded something else up to do that. At the same time, we get rid of passwords. So we install 2-factor authentication across the board. We use DNS filtering, so we never do web filtering. We always do DNS filtering. So one person's Sears catalog is another person's porn, right? So we don't like to have web filtering. People shouldn't be told what to look at, but we do DNS filtering. So DNS is the phone book, domain name service. So if I want to dial Google, I have to go to google.com and find out their IP address is 8.8.8.8. And so it makes that translation. If we see somebody making a request to something that we know is bad, we just deny it. Every traveler gets a virtual private network back to their home or office firewall. So they're monitored and managed just like they're in the office. And then the whole thing is pumped into our analysis suite, and it's managed and monitored 24/7. So I'm going to just pause for a second and let that sink in, and then we'll go on to the next slide. Okay. I'm sure that my guys are answering questions, so I'm going to just move along. This is where we talked about video surveillance. So if you've got a physical security system in your home or your company, including Ring cameras, Nest thermostats, all of those things, the installation instructions are the same as what I showed you earlier about plugging it straight into your cable modem. You don't ever want to do that. And so we put in that Fortinet firewall that I talked about. This is the home version. And then we plug all of the cameras and the network video recorders and all of those things get plugged into this Fortinet firewall. And that way it's protected from the outside world. Seems like a pretty easy step. I don't know why more people don't do this, but in almost every case, when we go into an environment where there's actually not in almost every case, in every case where we go into an environment where there are video surveillance or network video recorders or alarm monitoring systems, we find out that they're hacked. It's the first thing on the list. But they all have back-end activities in the cloud, and we make sure that we get those protected. And the same thing for the people who are monitoring those cameras, we make sure that they're protected. So this is a really big deal. As you're thinking about this framework, this architecture, I'm just going to go back to this for just a second. Antivirus, anti-evasion, every computer. Pads and phones, have them VPN back to your office firewall. On the firewall, use DNS filtering, intrusion prevention, all of the things that are on there, you can turn those on. This is how you set up a basic environment for any office or home. In fact, this is the same architecture in my homes and the same architecture in the companies that I work with. This is the same architecture we're looking at here. Last, this is a big slide. And this is what you're seeing when we talk about, or you see others talk about, zero trust. Everything that we built out is a stepping stone towards a full zero trust architecture. Now, this architecture is actually, the gray stuff here, is Microsoft's reference architecture for zero trust. What does zero trust mean? It means that every computer, whether it's got a keyboard and monitor or not, must be identified and tracked on the network. There has to be two-factor authentication so we can track users. We track every device on the network, every piece of data that moves across the network, every application that's running across the network, and we do it all in real time. And if we don't like something that we see, we automatically kill it. So in this case, we use Cisco Duo for two-factor authentication, and we replace the passwords. We use FortiClient for antivirus to track all of our devices, and then we manage that through the FortiClient Enterprise Management System. We use a tool called Avanan for users who are Office 365 or Google. And what Avanan does is it plugs in directly to the API, the application program interface, so that we can kill spam before it ever gets to your inbox. That's the whole idea, is to thin out the spam, kill off the phishing. We also have the ability to monitor for malware and for things like people putting data where they shouldn't. So Avanan is an awesome tool for doing that. FortiClient lets us track our apps. Infrastructure, this is something called microsegmentation that we just don't mess with, because normally it's done by networking teams or IT teams on site. And then we push everything into a Fortinet analysis suite on the back end, and we monitor it with a couple of different tools. Cyware gives us good automation, and Elastic gives us the ability to go back through a year's worth of logs and see if there's anything else going on. Darktrace and FortiGuard Labs are our intelligence providers. So the idea is when somebody logs in, we just assume that they're compromised. When somebody logs in, they log in and they want to access an application. And we're watching that whole thing here happen. And we compare that to intelligence sources to tell us whether or not we're good or bad. And if we find out it's bad, then we move along. So that's it for the talk. Went right on schedule. I thought it was about 25 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop now and answer any questions.